mentioned you want to generate H2S in a controlled manner. So out of curiosity, how feasible you see it in terms of achieving this goal, or where you feel you are tracking on it? Like, is this seems like a nearly 5 to 7 year timeline, or like a really long question? And is there anyone who has already sort of reached towards that globally?
So there are several. Sorry, I think there's a echo. Sorry, there are several compounds which are in various stages of advanced preclinical investigation. So there's one in phase one, one in phase two, and so on. So, but these are for very niche conditions. For example, this NSAID is used for osteoarthritis. So therefore, you don't have to really worry about, so the administration route may be different. But ultimately, what we would like and what others would like is to be able to deliver it exactly to where we want. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of a longer answer here because it's important to understand. In the 90s, it was found that brain has H2S that is, there's a lot of H2S that is produced in the brain. Okay. And subsequently, it was found through clinical studies that people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and so on, actually patients had lower levels of H2S compared to the normal paired person. Now, therefore, there's a lot of interest in being able to understand what the role of H2S is, number one. That is going on, biologists are working on it, there's a lot of progress in it. But secondly, it's really interesting and important if we can actually generate H2S and slow down the degeneration. Okay, so this is something that we are very interested in. Now, of course, delivering anything to the brain is super challenging. We all know that it has to cross the blood-brain barrier and it has to get activated and so on. But this is something that we are very keenly interested in. We are presently working on trying to do that. And before this lockdown, actually, Prerna was working on some neuronal cells, and we were trying to see if there was any effect of our compounds. But then Corona has not just affected my hairstyle, but also affected our research. So we are hopeful that once things get back to normal, the new normal, we'll be able to conduct these studies. So there is a question from Korakkar. Can the sulfur of carbonyl sulfonide, which I think he means carbonyl sulfide, somehow coordinate with zinc of carbonic anhydrase and hamper the generation of H2S? Excellent question. So it's been known that COS can actually inhibit, H2S can actually inhibit carbonic anhydrase. But the possibility of the concentrations that we're looking at with COS, we don't see much of an inhibition in our hands. But in principle, yes, it is possible. Another question is, do you need carbonic anhydrase to hydrolyze carbonyl sulfide? Can it happen without carbonic anhydrase? So the answer is yes, it can happen without carbonic anhydrase, but the rate of hydrolysis is quite slow. And if in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, it is very highly accelerated. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it is in excess of 10,000 or 100,000 fold increase in rates. Next question is, what are your thoughts about replacing sulfur with selenium in the compound synthesized by your lab? As we know, selenium is more reactive than sulfur, and selenium is also having more antioxidant property than sulfur. Excellent question. Yes, we ourselves are not working on selenium. I'm not very confident about the toxicity issues of selenium, and I'm not going to start a research project on that. However, there are labs across the world which have done this work on selenium, and including Professor Mukesh, who's the next speaker in the series, if I'm not mistaken. He might speak a little bit about selenium in his talk. And it has excellent antioxidant activity, and indeed it is a much better antioxidant compared to sulfur. But just that we have limitations in synthesis, and so we are focused primarily on sulfur. Now, the next question is, can you please comment how much quantity/concentration of H2S is produced in the reactions you carried out in your lab? As H2S is toxic, does the quantity produced matter, and any kind of precautions are needed? Excellent question again. Now, in the test tube, what we do is we use reagents that can help us detect the concentration of H2S very accurately. And these tests are pretty much in the micromolar range. So we can look at 5, 10, 25 micromolar range because they're accurate for us to detect. Now, when we do the experiment with, let's say, 25 micromolar of some of the compounds that we have produced, we normally observe about 70 to 80% yield of H2S in these experimental systems. So therefore, we would assume that a similar yield can be obtained inside cells. Now, the problem is quantifying H2S in cells is no easy task. There are a number of strategies that are available. We have tried some of them, but there is no reliable way to do it. And so therefore, we always depend on independent chemistries to understand H2S, the amount of H2S that is produced. The biological concentration, relevant concentration of H2S is in the nanomolar range. Now, having said that, the focus of a lot of attention now is not on H2S, but on actually on this sulfane sulfur pool, which is contributed, which H2S contributes to. So therefore, there are polysulfides, there are persulfides, which are all produced. So the focus of a lot of research now is not on H2S and generating H2S, but instead producing these persulfides and polysulfides in cells. The concentrations of these persulfides and polysulfides, this is a heterogeneous mixture. So you can have multiple oxidation states of sulfur in this. The concentrations of these is substantially higher than the concentration of free H2S. I hope I have answered your question. So Diksha, is there any way for me to get feedback, or should I just assume that they're happy with my answer?
Hari, you can continue because they cannot directly converse with you.
Okay.
However, they can just keep writing their questions in the Q&A tab. So you can reply what you think is the appropriate answer, and that's fair.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the next question is, any correlation between H2S, cytosine, and disulfide groups, please? Okay. So Yogendra Kumar, can you please rephrase your question and send me another question again? The question is not very clear. So I'll move on to the next question. You can send me the question and I'll be happy to answer it later. Next question is, how boronate-based probe can be used selectively? Because we know that peroxynitrite. Okay, fantastic. All right. So this is a question from Debojit Bhattacharji. Very nice question, Debojit. So the boronate ester is actually quite reactive to peroxynitrite, and that is absolutely correct. Now, the half-life of peroxynitrite in cells is very low. So therefore, if peroxynitrite is produced, if it's present in cells, it is going to react preferentially with the boronate ester. Now, in our strategy, what we looked at was being able to react for the boronate ester to be able to react with hydrogen peroxide. We are all right if it reacts with peroxynitrite, because usually peroxynitrite is produced when you have a burst of ROS as well as NO. So when you have a burst of superoxide radical anion and NO, you produce peroxynitrite. So it's quite likely that it is an inflammatory condition. So we are perfectly fine if our compound gets activated under these conditions where there is peroxynitrite to produce H2S or persulfide, because we would assume that these conditions are going to be also inflammatory in nature, and we would want to reduce the inflammatory burden at that point. Okay. If we trigger via glutathione mediate H2S release, how we can think of making probe selective from glutathione but not with cysteine? Okay, Debojit, I think you need to phrase your question better. I'm not able to understand it. Sorry, so I'll move on to the next question. Is there any in situ production? This is from Mrinal. Is there any in situ production of H2S inside human body? Does it help or adversely affect on mechanisms taking place in our body? Okay, so good question. I didn't have time to go through the various biosynthetic aspects. So inside the cell, H2S is constantly produced. There are 3 major biosynthetic pathways. There's recently a 4th one that's been added. And these these are these are enzymes that are produced that turn over cysteine essentially to produce hydrogen sulfide. Now, these enzymes are actually they are all present in nearly all cells. Okay, almost all cells express these enzymes, but the level of expression or there is a difference in the amount of these enzymes produced depending on the nature of cells. So, for example, in the brain, there is an enzyme called as 3-mercaptopyruvate sulfotransferase and cystathione beta synthase and cystathione gamma lyase that are produced, and their levels vary compared to what is produced in the heart or in lungs. Okay. Now, this dysfunction, that is, if there is anything affecting the expression of these enzymes, then it is going to be problematic. So there are in biological model systems, what you can do is you can actually do what is known as a knockout. So you can take the gene that is expressing this enzyme and take it out from the genome so that that enzyme is not produced. So if you do that, for certain biosynthetic pathways, the animal does not live. So if you remove the enzyme that is necessary for H2S production, the animal does not survive. Okay. In other cases, for other biosynthetic enzymes, it leads to adverse symptoms such as mental retardation. So if you remove one of the enzymes that is known to produce H2S, then the person who has this genetic defect can actually have mental retardation. And in animal models, it has been shown that it has very high levels of anxiety. So all these biosynthetic pathways are very essential for the normal functioning of our body. Okay, so the next question is from Babatosh Banik. He's asking, how do you ascertain the cell permeability aspect of your compounds? Okay, so we do two things mainly. One is to use dyes which are cell permeable, and then study if there is a turn-on fluorescence in the presence of H2S. That is one way to do it. The other way is actually what we do is we treat the compound, and we can co-treat it with some dye that is sensitive to H2S. We lyse cells and we do an HPLC to check if the product is actually formed. So which means that the fluorescence signal is not just some artifact that is there because of some other process, but we can actually isolate the fluorophore itself and find out whether the molecule has been formed or not. In addition to that, we can use indirect methods. So for example, when we collaborate with Dr. Amit Singh's lab, he has this redox biosensor, which looks for oxidative stress within cells. So if H2S is indeed produced, then you see that there is a decrease in the oxidative species that are produced inside cells. So using these multiple techniques, we are able to find out whether the molecule is permeable or not. Okay. How can H2S be used as an antioxidant? Okay, so this is from Manoj Kumar Banjare, I think. Hey Manoj, so we described some of the studies that we do in our lab in this antioxidant realm. So H2S doesn't directly act as an antioxidant. What it does is it actually activates the antioxidant pathways inside the cell and provides a robust antioxidant response. So that is how H2S acts as an antioxidant, and therefore by increasing the level of H2S in cells, you can use the intrinsic cellular machinery to respond to oxidative stress. Okay, next question is from Anonymous attendee. Hi Anonymous. Hydrogen sulfide is being produced in large quantities in refineries and even environmentally like volcanic eruptions. Can't that be improvised to produce in a controlled way? Okay, so I think it's a very interesting question. I don't have an answer for this. Yes, indeed, it is being produced in large quantities in refineries, and of course, in volcanic eruptions, H2S is known. I need to think through this a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure if we can use this for biology. It has been used for mass production of H2S. For example, petroleum refineries make an attempt to, purposefully capture the H2S that is produced, and so on. Okay. Shruti Khanna, can we use H2S solution formed during synthesis of metal chalcogenides such as WS2? Excellent question. So, see, the basic way of generating H2S is you need to break a bond, okay, between the sulfur and X and produce H2S, right? So you can do this by making an organic molecule like how we have made, and others. There are many other groups across the world that have made this. You can also do this through inorganic complexes. You can always cleave it and produce H2S. Being an organic chemist, I do not have any experience with working with these inorganic sulfides. And I do not know about their permeability and how under biological conditions they would get reduced and so on. So I'm not entirely sure about whether this strategy will work or not. It is maybe there are groups that are working on it and so on, but I'm not aware of this. Bhaskar Sen has asked, is there any group which is also reduced ROS and better than H2S? Okay, so if you look at the rate constants at which H2S reacts with the various reactive oxygen species, the rate constants are quite relevant. And so you would assume that H2S can directly interact with these molecules. But like I mentioned earlier, the rate at which persulfides and polysulfides do the same reaction with ROS is substantially higher. Okay, so I showed you a study from Takaiki, Akaike and co-workers where they showed that the persulfide is super efficient at quenching ROS. So therefore, these are groups, that is persulfides and polysulfides are better in reducing ROS compared to H2S. Okay, I'm trying to find out the next next thing is Dr. Anand Burange. So he says in slide 27-28, reaction may lead to the formation of a thioketone. What are the effects of a thioketone? So let me just go back to this 27-28 so that I can look at the slide. Yeah, so this is the thioketone that he's talking about is this over here. And so we do not observe the formation of a thioketone. We do observe in pH 7.4 that there is hydrolysis of that as well. We have attempted to characterize it, but we are not able to isolate the thioketone. But under the conditions under which, under the conditions under which we do the experiment, we see that it undergoes hydrolysis and produces H2S. There are experimental evidences that there's experimental evidence that a ketone can actually be formed as a byproduct, not a thioketone. Under the conditions we are doing the experiment. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Presence of a mercapto or thiol group on a drug molecule, it's from Sayak, have a chance of forming H2S? Very good question. See, if you see, there are a number of compounds which are actually drugs which contain a thiol. Okay, so there's captopril, for example. So you need to understand how these are going to undergo metabolism. So if these molecules have a leaving group which can leave, like the ones that we are looking at, then yes, it can produce H2S. If not, it is more likely that these thiols will get oxidized under the metabolism conditions in our body. So it really depends on the kind of molecule that you're looking at and the kind of functional group that is attached to the sulfur that is there in the drug. It's a good question. So Girijesh Verma has asked, there is iron and hemoglobin. Is there any interaction between COS and heme? Oh, very good question. I actually should feign ignorance. I don't know this answer. I think Preeti is on the call. She can always answer it through text. You can, Preeti, why don't you type out the answer when you get a chance? We'll move on to the next question. whether persulfides could be used in thiol terminated polymers. Wow. Good question. Again, I don't have an answer for this. We can move on to the next question. Can you comment on the combination of H2S with other gases? This is Yarra Venkatesh, NO, SO2, CO, and so on, mainly on cancer. Okay, so the see, cancer is, as you know, is a very complicated disease. There are a number of strategies which I have also worked on in the past, and many other groups have worked on, where we deliver NO to cancers. So there, what we found was that there were these nitric oxide conjugates were actually quite good at, including in animal models, they were very good at when their anti-cancer activity. However, a lot of effects of NO are dependent on the concentration. Second thing, there's recently, there are pharmaceutical companies that are interested in NO because there are some niche cancers which are difficult to cure, and NO is very active against them. So this is the literature that I know of about nitric oxide. Coming to carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide, the literature is still emerging. Our lab has developed many compounds that generate SO2. And CO has been very widely used, mainly in antioxidant, and also as a support for other drugs. So the therapeutic effects on cancer will really depend on the nature of the cancer, on how you deliver it, what is the concentration, and so on. Raja has asked, what are the practical difficulties to store the H2S? Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, you can, the way we store H2S is you can buy a cylinder of H2S. We have one in our lab. And so there is no practical difficulty in storing H2S, but the practical difficulty is in generating H2S inside where you want it to generate. Okay. What are the precautions? Sulender Mahato was asked, what are the precautions to be taken while performing the assay for estimating H2S release from synthesized compounds? See, there are not too many precautions that one needs to take, because the concentrations that we are producing in these assays are very small. Second thing is that they're in low micromolar and so on. So normally we do it on a bench top. Sometimes when we use higher concentrations, we use a hood. So you can use these normal laboratory conditions for studying this. Okay, let me move on to the next question. Okay, let me. So Panasonic has asked, what about the toxicity of the synthesized compounds in normal cells or others as observed, like anti-proliferative assay? Okay, see, what we have done is basically we have done some preliminary studies in what are known as immortalized cells, and then we don't find any evidence for toxicity. But the major focus of our lab is in the design and synthesis and preliminary evaluation of these molecules. Once we find that there is some promise, then we work with with biologists to take the compounds forward. So far, we have not been in this project. We have been working for about 5 years. So far, we have not been able to find. Maybe we have 1 or 2 compounds which are very, very promising. And right now we are working on trying to see if we can collaborate with biologists to test them further, which will include all of these studies that you're mentioning about toxicity and so on. Okay, so Vishal Kaliswaran has asked, you mentioned the indiscriminate destruction of macromolecules by ROS. Do you work on producing such, maybe to use as anti-cancer agents? Excellent question. I don't know if Dharma and all are here. I think Ravi is here. These are students who have graduated from my lab. And so they spent a lot of time in designing compounds that can actually generate ROS. And so we do have strategies that can help localize the production of ROS. And we are very interested in this. And we also work on understanding how ROS affects bacteria and so on. And we are we do have the capability in our lab to do this. So yes, the answer is yes. Anand Muttaya has asked, persulfides are converted to sulfonic acid. Is it possible that this sulfonic acid gets stabilized in the protein? Will it affect the cell? Okay, so persulfides will get oxidized to form S-sulfonates. Okay, SSO3 minus. Now SSO3 minus is there are proteins which are very stable in this form SSO3 minus, but there is an enzyme called as thioredoxin, which can come and cleave the sulfur-sulfur bond and produce sulfite. So if the protein, if the sulfonate is quite buried inside the protein, it may not be able to access thioredoxin, and this might be quite stable. But if it is accessible to thioredoxin, then thioredoxin can come and cleave it and produce sulfite and regenerate the thiol. So I don't know whether it will affect the cell or not, but sulfite at low concentrations is actually not very toxic. At higher concentrations, it's quite toxic. Instead of using H2S, can a molecule be designed containing SH group with proper hydrophilic balance that can pass the blood-brain barrier? This is asked by Rajeshri. Very good question, Rajeshri. We are trying to do this now. Like I mentioned, we have very interesting compounds in our lab. We have not published them yet, which are showing excellent antioxidant activity, and we are gearing up to study this. Now we need to really study how to get the molecules across the blood-brain barrier, and this is something that we are very interested in and we want to develop. And so if you have any ideas about this, you can please email me. My email address is listed in the last slide. So please email me if you have any suggestions about this. We'll be very happy to take the conversation forward. Okay. What is the next question? Rahul Hegeste has asked, can your mechanism of generating H2S be used in vivo? If yes, can it be used to remove toxic metals such as cadmium, lead, and mercury? Good question. See, I have to think about this answer. Detoxification of metals is very important, but I'm not very sure if we have not tried it. It's a really good question. We should give it a shot. We should see if our compounds work against this. Thank you for the suggestion. I'll go back and think about it. Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions? Have you tried, Anonymous has asked, have you tried conjugating these molecules to peptides for greater selectivity? Do you think a conjugate like that would work, or would it under physiological conditions undergo intended function prematurely? Okay, so we don't work on peptides. Our lab has very little experience in synthesizing peptides, but there are some groups in the US which work on making peptide and oligopeptides and based H2S donors. And there are groups which also work on making polymeric compounds which produce H2S for various applications. So yes, the answer is yes, it can be done, but we don't work on this. Okay, so Debajit Bhattacharya is asked, the measurement of H2S is tricky, sir, but I would like to know how to understand the level of H2S that is essential for angiogenesis or apoptosis. Because it's having dual nature, please put some light on this. Okay, so the honest answer to this is I am not an expert in H2S biology. I am basically a chemist with a lot of interest in biology. So I am not entirely sure about what the role of H2S is in angiogenesis and apoptosis. But I can tell you that H2S is known to enhance repair, and when H2S is present, the function of the repair function is actually improved, and so this might have some implication in angiogenesis. There are several publications in very good journals which show that H2S anti-cancer drugs, if you take the conjugates of these drugs, they actually work better than the anti-cancer drug on its own. But here, the focus is mainly on mitigating the side effects. So if you see many anti-cancer drugs such as doxorubicin and so on, actually have some severe side effects. So here H2S is used to mitigate these side effects. Sometimes H2S has been used to enhance the efficacy of the drug, but those examples are fewer in terms of cancer. So I hope I've answered your question, but I can, if you email me, I can give you some references about this and you can look through them in detail, Debajit. Okay. If there are no further questions, Diksha, can we wind up, or is it time? Or
yes, please.
Okay, I'm happy to take more questions, but I leave it to you, Diksha, to
How many more are there? Maybe you can have like 3-4 more questions, because there are a few questions which are appearing in chat and somehow people are not able to type. So I can read 1 or 2 questions from the chat for you.
Yeah.
There is a question by V. Shalini. How do you confirm that toxicity is removed from hydrogen sulfide?
See, toxicity of H2S is invariably manifests itself at higher concentrations. Now, so therefore, we would want to keep the concentration of H2S that is produced to be on the lower side. The last part of my talk, I told you that H2S actually protects bacteria from antibiotic-induced stress. So this is a complication that we need to keep in mind when we are generating, which is why I put a question mark after bright future, because by generating H2S, we may actually be protecting certain pathogenic bacteria from antibiotic-induced stress. So we need to walk this fine line, so to speak, if we want to develop this this field better. Okay, so I hope I've answered the question.
There is one more question by Dr. Manjula, and she's asking, is it not possible to purify sewer gas instead of going for new methods of preparation? So what are the disadvantages in purification?
Oh, so H2S gas is actually used. I mean, it can be used and it can be administered and so on. There's no problem. The only thing is that we don't know how much is getting in. We have no idea how much is getting in, and it can vary from person to person. And it has a high web, it's going to volatilize, so there are multiple other issues with it which don't make it highly desirable. So you can use it. So nitric oxide, for example, you can use it for inhalation therapy. People have used it. In fact, people are looking at it even for the SARS-CoV-2 and so on. So there's no problem with using a gaseous thing if you can control how much of gas is administered. But let's say you wanted to get to the brain. How are you going to use a gas for getting it to the brain? So you need to get through the lungs, get into the blood, cross the blood-brain barrier, and then. So instead, we need to focus on strategies that can help it get to the brain or even the cardiovascular system, and that's why you need small molecules which can generate H2S.
I will take 2 more questions. There is one question by Arunan. Are there any studies on how H2S is interacting when it acts as a neurotransmitter?
Yes, so H2S is known to interact with NMDA receptors, and it's known to persulfidate it, and it acts through these receptors. And that was the original study that was done in 1996 by Kimura, where he showed that it can act as a neuromodulator. I have the citation listed in my talk. If you email me, I can share with you the paper as well. It's a very interesting paper.
The another question by Rajarshi. The NSAID that you talked about without the bronic ester group, can it be delivered by mouth? question mark. Since
Yeah.
the aromatic group can get oxidized by cytochrome P450 and give the corresponding phenolic thiourea, which in turn will release COS and absorbed by the liver.
Yeah. So, see, at this point in the original project that we were looking at, we were looking more at the proof of concept. So we wanted to see whether our strategy of breaking it down works. And we use the best case synthetic route and the best way to produce it, not necessarily the most elegant in terms of therapeutic applications. So with that, we have enough evidence that as a strategy it works, but not well enough for us to take it forward.
Mm-hmm.
So once we improve this method, now we have much better compounds in our hand. Once we improve this method, what we are planning to do is to first do through IV injections, or through intravenous injections first, to see through the blood to see whether the compound works. And then one needs to sit down and optimize for oral bioavailability, because oral bioavailability, as you know, is a major challenge, and that is where a large number of molecules fail. So we have a long way to go. We are in the early stages of this project, and hopefully we will progress further, and we will be able to address these questions better.
So we have Ramya A, and she is asking, let me have her question. Anaerobic digestion systems generate H2S. Is there possibility to collect and store H2S for further use?
So H2S, there are bacteria which produce H2S, that is very well known. And so you can collect, and in fact, that is what was done earlier. So what they did was, I don't remember the year, but sometime in the 20th century, they used this lead acetate paper. And this lead acetate paper reacts with H2S and produces lead sulfide, which gives a black color or a dark color. So that is what they use to find out that H2S is actually produced by bacteria. Now, can it be stored? I do not know the answer to that. I don't know how much of H2S would be produced, and so on. So I don't have an answer for that. But yes, in principle, you can use it.
Some of anti-cancer drugs, bleomycin and anthraquinone, exert their action through the formation of ROS. Does H2S hamper their MOA through the scavenging property?
Excellent question. So see, the thing is that whenever there is high level of reactive oxygen species or ROS, H2S can act as an antioxidant. There is no ambiguity about that as yet. But the problem is that we don't know what concentrations H2S is actually being produced. So I will give a parallel answer to this. So so I'm going to shift the discussion to bacteria, because that is a system where we have worked on. So we use antibiotics. We means me and my collaborators, Dr. Amit Singh in particular. So they use antibiotics and they study whether ROS species are produced, reactive oxygen species are produced in bacteria. And using a variety of studies, he finds that there is indeed an increase of ROS when when bacteria are exposed to antibiotics. Okay. Now, when H2S is produced under these conditions, it can not only act as an antioxidant, but it also protects bacteria from antibiotic-induced stress. This is not just work from our lab, but it is work from several other labs globally. And the first report of this came somewhere in 2008, 2009. So if you extend this study to all other ROS generating systems, yes, H2S can act as an antioxidant. May hamper the functioning of these drugs. But as I mentioned earlier, our interest is not in cancer at this point. And so we have not really investigated systematically the effects of H2S in cancer.